All right, I will say good morning, good morning. Let us begin. We are continuing in Meretz Hashem today in Shaar Habitachon, and we find ourselves again in the Hebrew edition. We find ourselves on page 25. Page 25. So the Mechaber writes as follows. He says, Ach toelas habitachon ba'olam. So remember again, we're going through the continued list of benefits that one could accrue, that one could acquire through bitachon and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and specifically contrasting this idea with there are certain perceived benefits that we have by placing our sense of security and trust in other things in this world. But at the end of the day, the benefits, so to speak, that bitachon and HaKadosh Baruch Hu afford us are overwhelming and dramatic. He's going through the list of them. So this is what I'll say. This we actually referenced in a previous shir, and it's perhaps one of the most incredibly beautiful and profound pieces. He says, Mehen menuchas halev min hadaigos haolomios. Bitachon and HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows one to free one's self from daigos, from worries, from earthly or worldly worries. Right? One ultimately is freed from certain, we spoke about this before, daigos halomos means earthly worries. Vashalva minidnud hanefesh, v'tzara lechesron ta'avosa gufios. And ultimately, it gives one a certain inner tranquility. Literally, shalva means tranquility. Nidnud hanefesh means like a nomadic sense of soulfulness. In other words, nidnud means movement. Nefesh means the soul. So constant, like ping-ponging around, pinballing around, or whatever, the ping-ponging around. V'tzar l'chesron ta'avosa gufios. And the tsar, the pain, when one lacks physically. So I'll say, so the idea over here is that bitachon and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives one this sense of inner tranquility. I have the ability to go through life with a certain sense of security. And I'm able to go through this world, and able to go through life with, again, a sense of quiet, a sense of security, a sense of tranquility. As the pasuk says, literally, blessed is the person who believes in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, puts his sense of belief and security in Hashem, and Hashem will be his source of security. Now, what I'll point out over here is as follows. The amazing part of this, what the Mechaber is doing with the pasuk is a cause and effect, right? Baruch HaGever Sheyiftach B'Hashem. If you put your bitachon in the Ribono Shel Olam, then what? V'haya Hashem mivtacho. Then Hashem will provide you with a sense of security. In other words, the more I invest in this relationship, the more ultimately, again, I'll get out. I put my bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ribono Shel Olam affords me a sense of tranquility as well, a sense of security as well. V'amar v'ayake itchasu amayim asher v'al yuval yishalach sharashab. Close the pasuk over here again from Yirmiyah, not like the pasuk from Tehillim. V'ayake itchasu b'hagemayim. It will be like a tree planted by streams of water, whose roots will go forth. The idea again, the tree that's planted by a source of water knows that it has a present source of sustenance. As such, it allows the roots to go out with greater confidence. So I will say, this is perhaps, I think, I mentioned this before, one of the most compelling parts that we have of the concept of bitachon, the idea that this sense of belief and security in HaKadosh Baruch Hu affords us a level of life tranquility. Isn't that the biggest thing in life? Because who amongst us wouldn't like a little bit of life tranquility? Right? We go through life just overwhelmed by so many different things, and at the end, and worried about so many different things. And meanwhile, bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't want to say, just to be very clear, the Mechaber is not suggesting that bitachon in Hashem takes care of all of your problems, right? We have to be very careful to avoid a certain infantile sense and understanding of spirituality, right? It's not the pshat that you put your bitachon in Hashem and you don't have any problem in the world. That's not correct. There are plenty of problems. Everybody has plenty of problems. But lamaisa, putting your bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you a sense of tranquility. You can live life overwhelmed by your problems, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing how I'm going to resolve or to solve anything, or I can live life with a certain sense of tranquility, which says, sure, I have problems. There are challenges. Some of them seem quite overwhelming, but I also believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has my back, that He is the great universal choreographer, and that somehow, some way, He will help me through this situation. That's what Bitachon does. That's what Bitachon does. Gives you that sense of inner tranquility. He goes on in the end. Menuchas hanefesh milachas b'drachim arachokim asher mechala hagufos u'mahares hashlamas yimei hachayim kimo shekasov ina baderech kochi kisar yamai. This is actually very interesting as well. Furthermore, what does Bitachon do? So Bitachon gives a person menuchas hanefesh. Once again, a certain sense of inner tranquility, so that he doesn't have to travel to faraway places for his parnasa. What does the rule say? So a person, to make parnasa, has to put in hishtadlus, has to put in effort. One of the greatest challenges when it comes to parnasa is how much effort is appropriate. Right? In other words, how much effort should I put in and then recognize, all right, I put in my hishtadlus and now HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to help me with the rest, versus, pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing to do more. So the Mechaber says something very interesting over here. He says, when a person has a sense of bitachon, that bitachon gives me this menuchas hanefesh, this inner tranquility. And this inner tranquility says, literally translated, I don't have to go to faraway places to make my parnasa. Because what happens if a person is running to faraway places to make their parnasa? That depletes an individual physically. And what happens once you're depleted physically? So I'll say depleted physicality leads to depleted spirituality. So when a person has bitachon, essentially what the Mechaber is saying over here, a person has bitachon, he realizes something very interesting. We'll say, how do you know when your hishtadlus, when your effort to make your parnasa is too much? How do you know? When it comes at the expense of your ruchnius, right? And this is an interesting thing, right? When the pursuit of my parnasa comes at the expense of my ruchnius, that's probably too much hishtadlus. Too much hishtadlus. He goes on, he says, and a person could travel so much for their parnasa, that what does it do? It literally takes years off their life, or days off their life. Kimo shekasov, ina baderech kochi kitzar yamai. So he then goes on, he says something amazing. V'ne'emar al echa min ha'prushim. So he tells a story about one of the prushim. I will say, prushim were individuals who tried to separate, like parush means to separate, tried to separate themselves a bit more from worldly matters in order to be a little bit more steeped in spiritual matters. Now again, we're going to see, here's the incredible piece, right? Even prushim had jobs. Right? Even prushim had jobs. So this was a guy, he wanted to live a life that was a bit more removed from the material and a bit more focused ultimately on the spiritual. So what did he say? This parush said, Ki halach el eretz rechoka levaki shatara petchilas b'shaso. So again, he's got to make parnasa, right? Like I said, even the prushi has to make a parnasa. So what does he do? He goes ahead and he went to a faraway land to make his parnasa. Okay. Upaga Adam Echame Ovdei Kochavim Be'irasha Halach Ela, and he met an idolater. Amar La Parush. So the Parush said to him, Kama Atem Betachlis Ivaron Umio Ta'avona Ba'avodaschem LaKochavim. So the Parush began to give the Oved Avodah Zarah a little bit of Moser, and he said to him, you're so foolish, you're so blind and lack understanding in your divine worship. So again, essentially the Parush saying to the Oved Avodah Zarah, you just understand, you think you're worshiping God, you think you're doing something good, you've missed the mark in such a dramatic way. You're supposed to listen to this. Arla Amagushi. So ultimately the Amagushi, the Oved Avodah Zarah, said to the Parush, said, tell me, Uma Ta'oved, who do you worship? Who do you worship? Armali Parush and the Oved Abore. So the Parush said, I worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Hayochel, HaMechalkel, Ha'echad, HaMatrif, Hashem, come on. And then he gives all these adjectives to describe the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the creator, the one who is able to do everything, the supporter of all, the sustainer of all, the one, right? The one who feeds all, there's no one like him. So let's listen to this. Amrullah Amagushi, Palcha Sosers Tvaracha, the Amagushi said, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. Right? Why are you a hypocrite? Amrullah Parosh V'heich. So we'll say, that with Parush, like, what? And I'm a Parush. I'm a card-carrying Parush. He took out his ID card. Right? In other words, what are you talking about over here? I'm a hypocrite. You're the Oved Avodah Zarah. Let's listen to this. Amrullah, Ilo hayamash amarta emes. So the Amagushi, the Ovid Avodah Zarah, says to the parish, if what you're saying was really correct, that you believe that your God is the Bore, the Yochel, the Mechalkel, the Echad, the Matrif, Asher in Kamov, that was really true. So if that was really true, so the Amrlo, Ilu Haya Mashamarta Emes, Haya Matrifcha Be'ircha, Kimoshe Trifcha Heina. Your God could have given you Parnasa in your town the same way that He's giving you Parnasa in this faraway destination. And you would not have to travel so far in order to be able to obtain your Parnasa. So essentially, what the Amagushi was telling to the parish was, look, if you really believe what you say, so yeah, you have to work, you have to put in effort, but if your God could sustain you anywhere and everywhere, why do you have to come here? Right? Why go ahead and trek to some faraway place to be able to find your Parnasa if your God could give you Parnasa, assuming you put in the requisite ishtadlus somewhere else? So I'll say, so what happened? V'nifseka tainas ha'parash. So I'll say, so here's what's incredible. So the parish accepted the Musar. Which is a pretty incredible thing, because generally, most of us, when we are confronted with someone giving us Musar, even if the Musar is correct, generally what we tend to do is double down, right? That's generally what we tend to do. So it's actually a pretty incredible thing that he hears this Musar, and he accepts it, and as a result, what does he do? The Shavli Artso, he went ahead and he went back home. The Kibal Aprishos Mina Isahi, and he accepted the Musar, and he said, you're right, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu indeed is the sustainer of all things, then at the end of the day, if I put in my Ishtalos, it can sustain me right where I am. Now I will say, is the Mechaber saying that of course, there are times where a person does have to leave his place of residence to go ahead and obtain a Parnasa. He's trying to make a point. And what's his point? His point is, I will say, that what does Bitachon give you? Bitachon gives you inner tranquility. And what that inner tranquility does is allows you to make good and dispassionate decisions. Because sometimes in life, what ends up happening is we end up running around like a chicken without a head, right? For parnasa, for this, for that, because we're not thinking clearly. Because I'm not thinking clearly. I'm so overwhelmed by the responsibilities that sit on my shoulders that I'm just not seeing life with clarity. And because of that, I end up making bad decisions. Or, it doesn't have to be bad decisions. I don't end up making the best decisions. But the power of bitachon is bitachon allows me to see God as the provider anywhere and everywhere. Okay, I have to put in my ishtadlus for parnasa, but let me figure out how to put in the correct ishtadlus. The kind of ishtadlus that doesn't come at the expense of my ruchnius. Right? Bitachon gives me, again, as he said before, menuchas halev, this inner quietude. Bitachon does not solve my problems, but bitachon gives me the headspace to be able to navigate them appropriately. We'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach.